Jai Gurudev. My name is Carla, and I'm so happy to be here on the fourth day of Navratri. So thankful for the team and everybody and for this beautiful invitation. It's an honor to me to be talking to all of you in this beautiful day. And the proposal for my talk was to speak about veganism. And I had a big thought about what to do, maybe to do some dishes, maybe to bring up some images of today's world. And then I went to a bit of silence in myself. And I remembered that I'm speaking on the fourth day of Navratri. The fourth day is connected to the heart center. So I thought, maybe I should talk from my heart to your heart about this topic of how we eat nowadays. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. So just be super comfortable, because it's going to be the two of us and among thousands of people. And it's just an invitation to open up our hearts and maybe see things through a different perspective, not my perspective. This is just an invitation from me to open up our minds and our hearts to some things that we might not be seeing. And just a little bit about myself. My name is Carla, as I said, and I live in Portugal nowadays. I've been living in many other places in Europe. I've been a scientist for most of my life, and the career in science was inspired by the curiosity I had when I was a child. And this curiosity I had when I was a child, it's in each of us. So it's something that comes with humanity and was from a simple thing, which was looking around me and looking up to the stars. So whenever I had a problem at home, and I had many problems at home, I would go to my window and I would look up to the stars. And as I looked up to the stars, something beautiful would happen. All my problems would be washed away by these twinkling suns. Thousands of suns up there, just shining. And silence. And so many mysteries. And so much space. And so much diversity. And that would just erase any thought and any feeling of confusion and sadness. And that will happen also when I was looking around me to nature, to simple things like plants, minerals, crystals, animals. And that was the beginning of me connecting to the world in a different way, rather than just looking around through the problems that were arising around me. And so, without me knowing, I was just being a scientist as a kid. And being a scientist doesn't mean anything complicated. It just means to try to understand the world. And so I grew up studying many science, since from chemistry to physics, and then I did all my education until my doctorate degree in astrophysics, which is the study of the stars and the cosmos and how galaxies form and how stars form, and all this beautiful knowledge about things that are not in our planet. And then I grew up always with this passion about space, but also about the earth. And although I was more curious and more passionate about space when I was a kid, as I studied more and more about the universe, I became more and more passionate about the earth, the planet itself. And so I did many years studying that and working in universities, observatories, going to telescopes. And At the same time, I was doing yoga. Yoga came into my life when I was a teenager, and so I was doing that as a personal practice. And people would always tell me that it would be beautiful for me to teach other people. And so there was a part of my life where I started to teach more and more yoga. I did many courses, and did many trips to India and to other countries. And so nowadays, I am not doing any more research in science. I'm just working in outreach, so explaining science to people in a way that they can understand. And I'm teaching yoga and meditation. I have a school in Portugal where I do that online, and also in person with retreats, trips, and courses. And so, as my mind is a mind of a scientist, but as my mind is also a mind of a yogi, this bridge that would link science to spirituality was always something that was growing in me as something natural. Science and spirituality are the same. They are just different ways to perceive the universe. In one way we can perceive the universe with our mind, with our rational mind and intelligence, and in the other way we can also pursue these answers with the surrender of the heart, which is also very intelligent. It's like we have two intelligences in us. And so the connection to make the bridge between these two seemed to be the answer. And this is not coming from me, this is coming from all around, and all people that have so much wisdom. And it's arising in all of us. And so to bring up the topic of how we eat, it's a topic of intelligence, from the heart and also from the mind. But this is not an easy subject, because each of us has a different background. Each of us grew up in a different place where food is different. So what is growing in the crops around us, the animals around us, the pollution, the amount of resources are different from each of us. So that's why I'm here to talk about opening up to perspectives that depends on the places where we live. And to think about the way we eat, we need to think about the way we think. So most of us eat things that we were growing up with, no? And so our parents would cook for us, and we would eat at our schools and with the family. So the food that people presented to us was actually love. More than food was love. Was the certainty that we would grow up healthy, we would grow up with everything we needed. And so food is health and food is love. And I was growing up and I never liked to eat meat, so my parents would make up meat. We have so many words for meat, no? We never say that this is a pig or this is a cow or this is a chicken. We always have different words to talk about animals that are not the names of the animals. And so we get a separation from what we are actually eating. And even today's food, it's not an animal anymore, it's just something mixed and processed that comes from someplace. And as I was growing up, I never liked the association of eating an animal, that I would also look with a different eye of love. And I would love cows, and suddenly, why was I eating a cow? I would love chickens, and why was I eating chickens? And so when I was around 15 years old, I started to check, why am I eating this? Can I eat something else? And that was the beginning of my path in being a vegetarian. And this was in Portugal, right? So in other countries like India, being a vegetarian may be something that comes from generations in our family, and it's totally normal. But in Portugal and in many other countries, in Europe and other continents, being a vegetarian 30 years ago, 20 years ago, was something very rare and difficult. Because our culture was all about eating what was around us and the resources that we have. And for us, animals are a big resource. And so I started questioning, can I eat something else that not this animal? Can I do that? Is that healthy? And so that was the beginning. And during that time, during that first 1 or 2 years of changing the way I ate, I started doing yoga. Yoga showed up in my life. I never pursued it. It just showed up one day in a gym, and that was the beginning of everything. And I loved it because I thought, my God, here's the philosophy that it's so old and people don't eat animals while they're practicing this because it purifies the body. That must mean that this is a smart choice for some reason. And it's just not me. It's a whole tradition that is saying that. So many people have been doing this, and it must be healthy. And so that was how I became a vegetarian, by just asking, why am I eating these things? And in the beginning I was a little bit mad with my parents because I didn't understand why they were feeding me like that, and I wasn't understanding why they were eating also that. So I had to go back to the origins of that and understanding that the way they cooked was love, and the way they knew how to cook was from culture, from their own families. So I also invite you to take a minute now to think of how much of what you cook at home is actually coming from a belief that comes from you. And it's small, right? We mostly cook from a belief that comes from our family. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's actually nothing wrong with it because our family knows a lot, and there's so much wisdom in how to use herbs and plants and how to cook dishes. But the reality is that our generations grew up in a different world where the resources were different. And so maybe our grandparents would have crops around them, and maybe they would have animals around them. But nowadays we don't have anything like that. But we still eat the same products. We still want to cook the same dishes, do the same recipes as many years ago. And the world has changed completely. So this is coming from so many sources. You don't have to look very deeply to find this. There's so many documentaries, so many articles, so many journals, so much information out there that shows you. And actually you can visit these places. You can actually see, okay, where do I buy these products? Can I visit them? And you can see with your own eyes. It's not the same as in your parents' times. It's totally different. And so I invite you to think that although there's nothing wrong in cooking and using the same products as many years ago, can you actually change and adapt to nowadays world? And if we weren't damaging the environment back then, we might be damaging the environment right now. And so this is what happens. And even 20 years ago, when I was starting to eat different things rather than meat, and I was using, for example, soya, after some years I understood that soya was not good. And soya was actually something that was putting in the soil and completely destroying the soil. And the grains themselves were genetically modified. And why doesn't nature grow up soya in a natural way? Why not? Maybe nature is saying that something is wrong with the way we are growing grains and vegetables. So whenever we are not doing things right, nature will rebel against us. And if we just use chemicals, we are just trying to cover something up in the way we grow things. And you might have heard about permaculture and many other intelligent ways of growing up vegetables and grains nowadays. And so eating animals in the Western perspective has always been something natural. And more people are now waking up to the reality that the animals do not come from farms anymore. They come from these terrible nightmare places where they don't move, They are fed up with hormones. They don't see the sunlight many times. They have organs that are so big that they cannot even walk because they don't have that capacity anymore. So they're just stuck in one place, being fed up, and then being killed and served as a meal. And we are eating that. This is what we're putting in our bodies. And why are we putting this in our bodies? Because we are stuck with the belief that this is the right way to do things. What if it's not anymore? Because the world has changed. What if not? And so this is not a discussion about what is right and what is wrong. Because maybe you are still living in an environment where you still see the animals that you kill. And you are okay with it. And you're not damaging the environment, and the animals are still living a happy life, and you are just using their bodies in the end to bring nutrition to your body. So I'm not saying what's right or what is wrong. That is up to you. But just question, really, where does it come from? And what are you putting in your body? Because whatever you eat becomes you. When you eat a banana, you become also a banana. Because it's inside of you, no? And it's not only the material part that makes up a banana, it's also the energy that you're bringing up. It's so different to bring something in our body that it's fresh rather than something that is not fresh. So that freshness comes from the energy that the element has. And so this is about animals. Why we eat animals, and an invitation to question how much of that is your decision, and to remind you that you can make a different decision according to the world where you live in, and opening up the eyes to the industry that is being paid to give you what you want, because those terrible industries only exist because we demand. If we do not pay for the product to exist, the industries shut down. And so many of them have done this. And what happens? The industry closes, it will open a new one. And if the new demand is something that actually is good for the planet and it's good for your health, they will give you that. So, because business works like this. Whatever you want, the business will grow. So if you want something good, they will make something good for you. So it's not about destroying so many jobs and everything like that. It's about putting new jobs that actually helps you and everybody and the planet. And so this is about vegetarianism. And there's no need for me to give you new recipes, because you might live in Portugal, you might live in the United States, you might live in India, you might live in Nepal, and the way you will want to cook, it's not the way I would advise you to cook, because you should cook the way that your culture taught you how to cook. You should use your own herbs, your own flavors. It's just an invitation to, instead of using animal products, to change to new ones. And if you don't have any idea of how to do that, buy some books, check online for recipes, and use your local products to raise beautiful dishes that are good for you and your family, and that are intelligent foods. So to eat with intelligence is to understand where you live, what are the resources, and how can you not damage the planet, and how can you not damage your health, putting hormones, putting chemicals, and putting suffering. And I just also want to bring something else, which is the veganism part. So all I talked to you was about mostly eating animals. But what about the animal products? And to be completely honest, I have been a vegetarian all my life, but I haven't been a vegan. I only started to be a vegan 2 years ago, when my partner became a vegan, and both of us cook at home, and it made no sense for me to eat animal products like milk and eggs and butter if he was not eating, because I didn't need it. And so in a way, it was finally the step I needed to take to also rethink the way I was still eating. Why am I still eating some products that I don't need? And this is more a sensitive topic, because if you think it's easy to stop eating animals, and it might not be easy for you, or maybe it's something completely natural because you don't eat animals anymore, the products is a totally different story, right? And I could even talk about the vegetables, because the way we eat vegetables, it might not be the right way also, because we might be eating vegetables full of chemicals and from the wrong season and coming from so far away, putting so much pollution with the transportation. So if we start making all these intelligent choices, we come to a point where we still see, why am I still drinking also milk from a cow? And again, it's the same belief. If you have a cow in your property, and if that cow is happy, you know that she has more milk to give than she needs for her babies. So it's a sharing process. And milk, for example, in India, it's sacred because cows are pure. And all animals are pure in reality. But are you really drinking that milk? Or are you drinking a milk that comes from cows that again do not move, or are too big, or are separate from the babies? And are you putting suffering inside of your body? Maybe you are even drinking powder milk. Where did that come from? And we are still using those products because, again, culture. And when I'm in India, I love chai, no? Chai is so good. The chai has milk most of the places. And how can we make chai with no milk? Makes no sense. My parents did that, my grandparents did that, so we should be doing that. But why are we still doing it if the world is different, and if cows are different, and if they're not happy as 20 years ago? Maybe it's simple and we can actually change it. So we can create, it's like we can make an update. We can still make the same recipes, but with an update of a happy way of cooking. So just when you go back home, or whenever you go to the supermarket, just check if you have different opportunities to bring home new things. For example, if you live in big cities, for sure you will have alternative to milk. Maybe you'll have almond milk, rice milk, cashew milk. There's so many ways. You can even make your own at home. And again, you just Google it and it's so easy to find. So give a thought about, can I track where my milk comes from? And if it's coming from a place where it might not be healthy for me, where I might be causing suffering to those animals, and where I actually might be causing suffering to the planet, can I change that? And maybe it's easier than I thought. Maybe I would never think about not drinking milk because milk is so good and it's the way my parents cook for me. But what if I can make my own decisions and still make beautiful chai and still have a lot of pleasure in drinking it, but coming from a sustainable resource and a happy resource? So this is about milk. You can make the same questions about other things, like butter, like ghee. You can still make the same dishes, but track, where does it come from? Can I change to a different product? In Europe, it's really easy not to use butter for cooking. We can use olive oil because we have many olive trees in most of the countries. But in Asia, that might not be the reality. But there's so many other plants that make oil, and healthy oils, and actually Ayurvedic oils that are good for the body. Why do I still have to use, for example, ghee? Well, maybe because everybody says that you should eat ghee, but can you make that decision for yourself? And even in puja rituals and when you're offering, can you make offers that are free from suffering? Because in the past that had no suffering, but nowadays you are putting suffering. So somebody has to actually make the question, raise the question, and change. And you might feel that you are doing this alone, but believe me, there are thousands of people doing this already, who changed already, and they are making amazing things already. So this is an invitation for you to trust in that, to think about that, and just do a very simple investigation of how can you swap something for something else that is more sustainable, free of suffering, and not harm others and yourself. And that is mostly what I want to talk to you. And also I want to invite you to send me an email or send me anything you want to share, any questions, and I will be here in the next minutes to also answer any question you want to raise. And I would love to discuss that with you. Thank you.
Hey Carla, hi.
Hello. Namaste.
Awesome. Namaste. How are you, Carla?
I'm well, thank you.
Awesome. What time is it, by the way? I'm assuming you're in Portugal right now, right?
Yes, in Portugal it's 20 past 3 p.m.
Oh, okay, cool. So it's still a very manageable time for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a perfect time. For you, it's dinner time. For us, it's after lunchtime. It's good.
Correct, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining in for that amazing talk which you just gave. So much perspective in it, so much experience. We love the way like you started right from your younger age to how your perspective changed with time. The fact that you're from such you've been a scientist for pretty much most of your life, but you've really brought perspective and thinking into the way you want to live your life, the meaning and purpose behind it. And I really love the fact that it says Carla over here, but I love the name Atma Bindu because that has so much more power and meaning to it. So definitely, I would love to address you as Atma Bindu if that's okay with you.
Please do.
Amazing. So, for all our viewers out there, you guys can ask any question right now through the live chat feature, and we'll be more than happy to ask some of your questions to Carla and Atmabindu so that she can give us some perspective on it. As you know, today's topic is about veganism, about its impact, about how feasible it is, and anything around that. We'll be more than happy to take that. So. I probably have a few questions already over here, which folks wanted us to ask. So, would that be okay for me to ask that out?
Please do.
Yeah. Okay. So, one of my first questions, right? I think it's a very straightforward question. They say that what exactly is the difference between a vegetarian, a vegan, and some people who say that I have a plant-based diet. Could you throw some light on this, Carla?
Yeah, nowadays there's such a rich variety of terms to use, and
Yeah.
there's lots of people who actually don't like labels anymore because you can make so many different choices. Some people don't eat fish, but they are completely vegan. Besides eating fish, there's so many ways. Some people don't eat certain types of food, but basically, in common terms, a vegetarian is someone who doesn't eat any animals, so there's no killing for eating the flesh of an animal. It can be a sea animal, a flying animal, or an earth animal, but they still eat the products. So products like milk that don't kill a cow, they are animal products, and a vegetarian can drink that, or honey, or ghee, or butter, and many other products. Sometimes we even use like soap at home to wash our clothes, and that has animal products, and we don't even know. So vegetarian is
Oh,
someone who just doesn't kill to eat. A vegan is someone who does that, but also doesn't eat any animal product. So all these milk products, as I said, honey, etc., a vegan usually doesn't eat anything like that, and also pays attention to things at home and in their daily lives that might use animal products. So some clothes, like animal skin, and shoes. So this person will pay more attention to those things. And then there's many other terms to serve whatever you are choosing for yourself. But these are the most common terms that you will find at a restaurant menu, and recipes. So those are the main things.
So, for example, how does, if you don't have milk, right? Because I think most of India, at least, is I think more vegetarian than vegan. So, if you don't have this, where do you get your protein from if you're a vegan?
Hmm. This is such a beautiful question, because in Portugal, the majority of people are non-vegetarian. So they ask that question about meat. When I go to India, there's no question about that because everybody mostly is vegetarian. So nobody asks about where does the protein comes from. Everybody assumes that they are okay and it's in milk. And it's so interesting to see how everybody has the same defenses about what they eat. So milk is a product that is very rich in many things, but it's just one product. It's like, why do you still eat meat if the proteins are in many other places? And then, okay, of course. And in India, everybody eats lentils, pulsars, beans, and it's completely known that if you don't eat meat, you will be okay. But milk? Wait, milk I have to drink. But again, this is an assumption that we have, but we haven't reviewed it ourselves. We haven't checked what is the reality of this fact that I assume that it's so true. And milk is completely replaceable. You can drink other things that have the same nutrition value that milk has. So you can drink vegetable milk, which means that it's coming from nuts, for example, or rice. But you can also eat the vegetables that have the same nutrition value. So, for example, broccoli will have a lot of things that milk has. But we don't even want to believe that is truth. So I invite everybody to check that out. Just Google or pick a book that speaks about what milk has inside and check if there's other things available that have the same thing. And if you still like to have this warm cup in your hands, because mostly milk is about that, no? It's a habit, it's a comfort food. Yep,
Right.
it's not about the nutrition value. Nobody drinks milk in the chai just because of nutrition value, mostly, no? So just substitute with something else that will make you comfortable. And if you're thinking about your children and if they will have the right nutrition, just check what milk has in it and where can you find it in a vegetable or plant-based diet, because you will find that it's very easy. And it's a belief that we just have. That's a great question.
Great. So I'm going to ask you two more questions now because a lot of your answers revolved around that. One is that find a plant-based alternative to it, and the second one was that find out whatever things they have in it, and you can always find. For example, you mentioned about broccoli, you mentioned about nuts and everything. So my two questions are: one, then let's be honest, is being vegan a very costly alternative? Let's be honest about that.
Mm-hmm.
And the second
Yeah,
question is that if you're talking so much about plants, we also come from a culture where we believe that even plants have soul, they have an atma and everything. Don't they feel pain then? Those are my two questions.
mm-hmm.
If you could answer that, Carla.
Great, great. So the first question was about costs. I
Yes.
can say that from all the years that I've been a vegetarian, things have changed a lot. In the beginning, I didn't have a lot of information, and it looked like if I became a vegetarian, I would have to supplement with many things, and those were expensive. Then I got smarter, and I thought, if I'm eating these supplements that are so expensive, where do they come from? Because if a lab is making them and if they are chemical, I don't want that. But if they're not, if they're coming from someplace, they can't come from animals. Otherwise, I'm not being a vegetarian. I'm just eating pills of animals. So where does these nutrition things are coming from in the pills? And then I tracked that they were coming from vegetables, and I was like, why am I eating these supplements if they are in nature? And then I got smart and I stopped eating these supplements of pills just by finding where they were coming from and finding the right products. So one thing that usually comes along with being a vegan is B12. So I am not a doctor, and you should check that by yourself. But there are many things in nature where you can find B12, and it's not a problem to become a vegan anymore. So you can find all these things in many food. The problem is that you are used to eating always the same foods. And when you turn into a different diet, you have to have variety, which is what you should have in the first place. But you are used to eating
Correct.
always the same thing. So becoming a vegetarian or a vegan, it's an amazing way to start eating variety. When you eat variety and fresh, that is not expensive at all. Whenever you turn yourself to processed food, so things that are already pre-made, like burgers and nuggets and sausages and pre-made meals, those are expensive. And to be fair, you don't want to eat those because they are not fresh. They are processed. They have chemicals to preserve. So why would you eat that? Maybe you can eat sometimes if you are in a hurry. But let's be serious. We are not turning ourselves to be vegetarian, vegan to become less healthy, because then it's just it's not true. No, you are saying that you are more healthy now,
It's a
but
very
you are
bad
not.
trade-off. That's not what you would
Yeah.
want.
Yeah, so being a vegan and a vegetarian, it is not more expensive. It is only more expensive if you turn yourself into products that are pre-made, processed, or supplements that are very, very fancy. And in reality, you don't need those because you can find yourself those things in food. So that is the first thing, but do check yourself, do check about what you need. Many people need iron and they're not having enough iron, but check what's going on in your body, because maybe you're eating a lot of vegetables with iron, but you're not eating fruits, or something is wrong with your gut and you're losing a lot of iron. But that will happen if you eat meat, or even get worse. So each individual has a different story and a different pattern. Do make some study of yourself or find someone who can guide you. This is very important. And then you will become more healthy for sure, and your life is going to turn 300 degrees around. The other question you made was about, remind me?
The plants. So,
Suffering, yeah, the
like
plants. That is a question that I've
plants and
been
some.
hearing all my life. And it's a really defensive question. And I know you probably are vegetarian, so you're making a question that you know that it creates a big impact,
So I'm
because
a
most people
vegetarian
ask.
and I'm also a Jain, right? So in
Okay.
Jain philosophy, which is a way of
Mm-hmm.
life, we believe that there is a soul even in animals, even in plants, even in microorganisms. We want to do as minimalistic harm to them. So keeping all that in mind, that's one question at least which I had. So this definitely is my
Yeah.
question.
That's great. I'm gonna try to give an answer in different degrees, because the sensitivity about this has lots of degrees. For someone who grows up in a farm and is used to see animals being killed because they are foods, they will have a different sensitivity to this matter. So when these people ask me this question and they have a sensitivity that's completely different because they are used to the killing as something natural, the first thing is, can you feel if there is any difference when you kill a cow and you kill a carrot, for example? And even those people who are used to kill, they completely see the difference. No, eating a cow
Right.
has a lot of screaming, has a lot of juggling around. You have to give tranquilizants, you have to immobilize. When you kill a carrot, you don't see any of this. So you don't have to ask me, you have to ask yourself. And everybody with a good rational mind will know the answer. Even before they're making it, they will know the answer. This is just a question that usually comes from defense. And you don't have to think even about that. You just go to biology books, and that this is a silly question, because biology will teach you that the nervous system is completely different from an animal to a plant. This is in the perspective of being a little bit less sensitive to killing an animal and killing a plant. As you become more sensitive, if you are prone to it, then even picking a lettuce or a tomato, you will feel that that was something that was growing and you are picking. So there is even a plant diet, plant-based diet that people will only eat when things are ready and they fall by themselves. Some people eat like this. They don't pick. They wait for nature to allow them to pick naturally. So this is a completely on the other side of sensitivity. But let's put ourselves in the midway. So why would we pick a plant if it's growing and we are just, we're killing it. A plant is a living being. We are killing it. The way I look, and it's my personal view, everybody has to see their personal views. The way I view, the plant can still grow if you're picking it. So if it's a plant with fruits, right? You are actually helping the process because you're creating more space for it to continue to grow. And you are allowing the process to continue. But if you actually have to kill the whole plant to eat it, then the way I see is I ask permission. So this is coming from someone who gets sensitive even about picking vegetables. If you come to the problem of pain and feeling and everything, you can still believe that plants are like that, but the degree biologically is completely different. In terms of spirituality and energy, the way I see is that we can ask permission because at least we are picking the foods that we need from a fresh place and from a resource that is much easier to reborn, right? Because the way plants can continue to grow is completely different from animals, and we can ask permission for that. But it's a big question. It's a spiritual question as well. It's a philosophical question. But in the degrees of pain and in life, if we look at the biology, then we can see that it's so different.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering that. I have a question by one of our viewers today. Mrs. Jolly Singh from Bangalore has asked a question. She says that I feel everyone can live without animal milk, but it's required for babies whose mother's milk is not sufficient. What substitute can you suggest for such newborn babies? So I think it's a very specific question from a mother,
That's a
and I
very
think it's a
important
good
question.
one.
I cannot answer that because number one, I haven't become a mother myself yet, and I am not a doctor, so it would be irresponsible for me to answer. What I can tell you is that I have dozens of friends who have grown up their families. They have many babies and children, and I also have adult friends who are vegan since they were born. And all of these people that I know, they are healthy. And I know people who are having babies and they are vegan themselves, and their babies are vegan themselves, and there's no issue about it, but they did research and they did get some guidance. So I would tell you that it is possible. It will become more natural as the years come. But do check for guidance, because if you do not have your own milk now to give to the baby, check what the alternatives are in a healthy way. That is a great question. Thank you for asking, and I hope you can understand that it will be responsible for me to give you the medical answer.
Awesome. Amazing, Atmabindu. My next question, again, I'm just going to play the devil's advocate today, so that this brings out more understanding for everyone. While you mentioned about that there's so many alternatives to compassionate living, for 1 minute, let's think about ourselves as well. What I mean by that is there are certain nutrition levels that we need to maintain depending on the kind of work which we're doing. Now, the country which I am from in India, it's a booming country. It's a country which wants to be now noticed, recognized, be on the top, and sports is very important now. So if I want to be an athlete, and I'm super sure many of our viewers are mothers, the fathers, and children themselves are listening, if they want to be an athlete, is veganism the way to go? Is that something which can support a sports based pursuit in life if we go vegan? Because so many of our nutrients and the nutrition levels are, will it like match up?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I will start with the quantity, because in many countries, breakfast is still the biggest meal of the day. And nowadays, our jobs can be so different. We can be more active at night. We can be more active in the morning. For example, in England, there is still the breakfast, the English breakfast, which is full of fat, full of protein, and that makes no sense anymore in the morning. And so again, we should check these patterns that come from different generations from ours, but we are still following the same path. So the quantity should be checked, first of all, the quantity. What do we really need? We need protein, we need many vitamins, but how much do we need for the activity that we have? If you are into sports, especially high-level sports, that is even more important. And actually, most of your training goes around the way you eat, because the way you eat will give you the right energy, the right capacity. Your muscles will develop in a very specific way. I am not a high-level athlete, but I have had students in my yoga classes who were looking for yoga for that, and they are high-level athletes. And what I've seen is the tendency in the past years of athletes becoming vegan. So I also invite everybody to check about that. Why are so many athletes becoming vegan? That must be for some reason. And many of those athletes had a past of eating meat. And suddenly something changed. They understood that the way their bodies were responding was not the way they thought they were. And they are changing. And there has been so many inspirational athletes that actually came into public, speak about that, and made people think, if this athlete is getting more health by not eating meat, that must mean something, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to compete in such levels. So that is a great question. And nowadays there's so many examples of athletes who are vegan and who are meat-free and who have a high performance. Absolutely.
In fact, I just researched about this. There's a very famous Olympian in the U.S. by the name of Carl Lewis. I think he won 4 gold medals in the same race, in the same Olympics rather. And even the very famous Serena Williams, who won the U.S. Open from the U.S. She's a tennis player. Both of them are apparently vegan. Now these are people who are not state level or county level athletes. These are international, renowned, who've competed with the best kind of folks. And if they are going vegan, then I think definitely brings out a question, and I hope it answers some of the points that if people like that also are saying that veganism can support an athlete-based a lifestyle, then definitely there is truth to it, and there is now proof also that you can probably have that. So I think there is
Definitely.
definitely reason to
And
believe that.
one extra thing about these is that these athletes have been around for quite a long time. And what they prove is that they understood that even if they were not vegan before, that was not sustainable. And they were developing lots of things in their bodies that they thought in the beginning that wouldn't be a problem. But after some years, these things grow. So you might believe that the diet you're having right now, it's perfect, you're healthy, but you do not see that you're developing things that long term will show up. And these athletes, because they have been here for so long, their change into veganism show that this is like an invisible enemy that prevents you to see that actually you're believing something that it's not real, right? It's like so many habits we have that are invisible, and we do them and we don't see the effect. So it must be okay. After a while, because they're so slow, no? Mechanisms in the body are
Right.
slow. And so the mind needs to pick up these things.
Absolutely. So I think we have another couple of questions. Maybe we could take max, maybe 2 questions more. We'll try to do the best with it. So one of the questions is a very interesting question. So they mentioned about that we've spoken about the food. If we make animals as the base of our food, then that's not compassionate, or neither is it sensible. But what about products? So, like for example, I'm going to ask this to you, Carla. Do you use mascara?
Ah, you mean cosmetics?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the reason why
Very
I asked it,
rarely. I used to
rarely. Okay.
use makeup when I was working in universities and in other places, but nowadays mostly no.
So here's a very interesting thing, which a lot of our viewers wouldn't know. Mascara, which is probably one of the most commonly used makeup items, right, is made from beeswax. Now, beeswax obviously comes from bees, and millions of them are utilized in the process, and that is how it's done. Now, while we choose about food and we have alternatives and everything to it, but when it starts coming to these things, would a true vegan also go to the next logical step of using products also which are vegan? Is that a concept, Carla, which exists?
Yeah. So I want to just say this. If you are not vegetarian or if you're not vegan, start with small steps, because sometimes we start reading and then it's overwhelming because we think, my God, I cannot eat and I cannot move because everything is animal products. So I would say start by changing step by step, because the impact of one step of, for example, just stopping eating red meat and then eating the other meat, just that step, it's going to have a butterfly effect. So do not worry about all those things. If in your path you've given many, many steps, and if you are more each day, if you're becoming more aware, and if you want to move beyond of really reducing the impact you have, then we can talk about this. Otherwise, please do your first step, because otherwise you'll become overwhelmed and you will not take the first step. And this really works like this. So step by step. If you are at that level already, then it is very important that you ask this question, because you might think, okay, I'm just putting a spoon of honey in my milk. But like you said, in the morning I will put my mascara and I don't even notice that I'm using the same resource. So I thought that I was just using a little bit of a bee product, but actually I'm using it all day long. For example, same thing with milk. I'm just putting some milk in my chai, but seriously, check how many products in your day have milk. So after all, you're using a lot of milk. Multiply that by how many people are at your place, in your home, in your family. Multiply that by the whole country. Do you have animals that are enough for such demand? And if you do, how can they be raised for that demand to be fed? It must be in a way that it's not natural. They can't be free and they can't be happy because there's so much need for so much product. So do make that question, absolutely. And then when you do make that question, you will see all the other side of the industry that makes those products vegan free, animal cruelty free, and those are much better. And you're going to see the ingredients, and they're beautiful ingredients coming from nature and coming from sources that are minerals or herbs, and these are beautiful. So why don't you use them? And the more you buy, the less expensive they will become. You might think that using those products at
Yeah.
home, like in soap, many detergents, in many cleaning products, in cosmetics, in oils, in the beginning they were very expensive, but as the public is buying more, we are finding ways to lower the price and make it more accessible. And to be fair, in my opinion, it's better to pay a little bit more and buy less quantity, because that's another error that we do. We just buy. We waste. But that is waste. Everything you buy, even the mascara, comes in plastic. So if you buy one and if you use it properly and if you don't waste so much, you are also buying less plastic, right? So
Good.
everything is connected. Even when you reduce because it's more expensive, it will bring you more value to the way you use it and to the resources around it, right?
It's amazing. It's
It's a big
amazing. Yeah.
conversation we could be having here.
Amazing. It's been such an amazing thing. I think we have only last 2 minutes. So maybe I'm going to ask you a I don't know if you can answer this in 30 seconds or not. They're insisting. Prakhar has a very good, beautiful question. He says that a lot of European countries, they consider fish as vegan. How does that make sense? Is that true? And how does that make sense?
Yeah. So just to be short, in Portugal, vegetarianism is now becoming more popular, but in the past wasn't. And I used to hear this question a lot. Now I still hear it, but it's less common. But I used to go to restaurants. I would say that I don't eat meat if they could give me something else, and they would bring me tuna or fish in a can or
Okay,
sausages.
right.
And I would look at them and I say, no, I don't eat animals. And they would reply, but this is not an animal. And so that made me see, oh my God, this person is really trying to please me, but he or she has no idea where this can comes from. And this is very interesting because it reminds the whole country that they've never understood where the food they eat was coming from. And Portugal has a big coast, so fish is very common. And nevertheless, they had this misunderstanding of where fish was coming from when it was inside a can. And this is just an example. Seafood has a lot of these things as well. So we just need to be compassionate about each other, because the knowledge that people around us have, it's not the same knowledge that we might have. So it's also good to share education in a very compassionate and patient way, because this is the process. This is the way we have to deal with it. And we also needed time when we became a vegetarian. So let's just be patient and caring to each other, and maybe our choices will make other people change by themselves, just by the example and the inspiration. No need to get violent, no need to get critical. Just be an inspiration to other people. And the way you live, the way you shine your health, the way you shine all these beautiful benefits of becoming more compassionate about animals and the environment will spread around with no effort, you will see.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Atma Bindu. You have really inspired all of us. You've given us such a beautiful, straightforward answer, very meaningful examples, relevant, and you've taken complete responsibility to not say anything which you can't take complete accuracy for. I really appreciate that, Carla, for taking our time for your beautiful session. This 1 hour is definitely something so many people have enjoyed, and it'll be accessible for a lot of your friends in case they weren't here. The recording of all of this will be up in a few hours, so please do share. And thank you, Carla. It's been an amazing time, and wish you a very happy Navratri. Thank you so much for joining in from Portugal, and we'll move ahead from here. So, Jai Gurudev and Jai Mata Di.
Jai Gurudev. Thank you.
थैंक यू सो मच. तो चलिए अब हम बढ़ते हैं फ्रॉम कंपैशन टू कल्चर, राइट. तो अभी हमारा मौका आया कि हम लोग ने इतना सोचा है, इतना सुना है, इतना समझा है. अब हमारे मन को खुशी के द्वारा, एक हस्तलेखा के द्वारा, हम लोग आज हमारे ब्रह्म ऋषि आश्रम में, जो हमारे हमेशा एक प्रथा रही है इस नवरात्रि में, 10 मिनट का समय हमारे पास है एक नृत्य देखने का, एक कल्चरल प्रोग्राम देखने का. तो बिना कोई हम लोग कोई देरी किए, चलिए आज हम देखते हैं 10 मिनट का हमारा बहुत सुंदर सा कल्चरल प्रोग्राम इस नवरात्रि के ऊपर.